Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are in the process of building up our channel membership numbers. That's right, we need you to join our army of interstellar crusaders so that we can continue to grow this channel with new material. Our current goal is to get to 70 members at the $5 tier or higher. Normally, you would get Discord access, early video access, custom emotes and live streams, and of course, nifty loyalty badges. Well, if we get to 70 members, Jerid and I are actually going to start a lore podcast, where we break down more Gundam stuff, plus other sci-fi franchises as well, like Warhammer 40k, Star Wars, and others. On top of that, you get 6 months of member exclusivity. If we get to 100 members at the $5 or higher tier, I'll turn off all the ads on all my live streams, provided that we stay at that threshold. Plus, I'll probably think of other goals later. So, join the crusade, dear viewer. Those Zakus aren't going to blow themselves up. After the initial strikes of the Aeug against the Titans, the Aeug finds their forces currently split between Earth and space. Quattro Bajeena has returned to the stars to continue the fight there, and Camille Bidan now travels with Karaba, the Aeug's earthbound counterpart. The conflict has also seen the return of the legendary White Meteor of the Federation, Amuro Ray, as he joins to fight alongside old allies in Karaba. Now in Hong Kong, new threats unleashed by the war crime-loving Titans will unearth before the young Camille's eyes, and a green-haired young woman will affect his trajectory for the future. Oh, and by the way, in this episode, we're going to have to talk quite a bit about new types. Well, now that Amuro is an item with Beltorchka, both he and Camille have managed to drop the Ashimar and have put the Titans in a rough spot. They're contacting the Murasame lab, but we don't know much about it. What we do know is that they do get a gigantic new mobile suit that is so heavy that it drags their ship downwards. At this point, Namikar Cornell, head of the Murasame research facility, and the pilot of this mobile suit, 4 Murasame, have boarded the ship. It's at this point that we need to actually talk a little bit about new type laboratories. As you probably noticed, 4 Murasame shares the same name as the laboratory that she's been sent from. That's because it's not her real name. It's a code name. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are watching Gundam G-Quux, we're going to mention that real quick too. You see, the majority of cyber new types from the Murasame lab were war orphans from the 1-year war that got their memories wiped, and were effectively turned into living weapons. One thing worth mentioning is that 4 is the only one we're going to see here. The other 2 that we know of, with numbers, are from alternate universes, with 0 Murasame being from the Girin's Greed games, and 2 Murasame recently debuting in Gundam G-Quux, only to be bodied by Shalia Bull. But what is a cyber new type exactly? Well, dear viewer, prepare for sadness. See, by and large, they're exactly what they sound like on the tin. They're people that have become new types not by being born with the abilities, but by having them implanted instead. We saw with Rosamia Bottom in the last episode that she had enhanced lung capacity, and many of them are given organ transplants, biotechnological modifications, which is where the cyber element comes from, and chemical therapy as well. The problem with this is that it makes many of them mentally unstable. Effectively, they are both super soldiers and walking tragedies waiting to happen. As for the Aeug/Karaba forces, they're going to be going after a Titan's base in New Guinea, which might also give them a chance to get to space. So they're going to meet with Luyo and company to resupply their forces. Also, for some reason, Beltorchka starts a conflict with Camille by suggesting that he give the Mark II to Amuro. Why? We're just going to put this image of Wu Fei grinning right here in the corner for a second. We don't even need to say anything. Anyway, the guys land in Hong Kong. Thankfully, there's no sign of Mr. Wong or the Dark Gundam, so that's a plus. Out and about at Luyo and company, Amuro runs into none other than Mirai Yashima! Though at this point it's Mirai Noah. We get our first glance at Hathaway Noah and Chaemin Noah, who, as you would guess, are Bright and Mirai's little ones. Amuro introduces Beltorchka to Mirai, with Mirai letting them know that they're trying to head into space. Amuro, being Amuro, cuts in line at Luyo and company to reach their contact and ends up in a bit of a disturbance and gets attacked. Beltorchka and Mirai flee with the kids, and they see the giant mobile suit hovering in the street. Oh, and now 4's handler drops that 4 might go nuts. Awesome! Regardless, Camille springs into action to fight this monster MS. Amuro wakes up after getting the crap beaten out of him to meet with Luyo Umin. Well, that's who their contact is, but this is actually their daughter. But their conversation doesn't last long until they flee the area. Camille, in the Mark II, fires on the giant monster mobile suit, but his beam rifle is ineffective. He tries to grapple with it, but gets thrown off. Now Hayato moves to get the Aldumla out of there, with Mirai and Beltorchka arriving safely. Nemo units are sent to reinforce Camille as well, who's still not having much luck against this monolith he's battling. At this point, the flying monstrosity changes its shape, revealing a giant black Gundam. This is the Psycho Gundam. The MRX-009 Psycho Gundam is a transformable mobile armor developed by the Murasame New Type Lab. It is specifically made for use by cyber new types, incorporating several concepts from the MSN-02 Zeong. Standing 40 meters tall, it is more than double the height of the Mark II, and at max weight is almost 6 times heavier. It carries a Minovsky flight system, which allows it to hover, a defensive eye field like the GPO-3 and the Nouvelle Ziel, has Gundarium armor, plus a ton of firepower. It has 2 mega beam cannons in the center of its V-fin, 3 diffuse mega particle cannons in the abdomen, 10 beam cannons in the fingers, and also has a hard point attached shield to protect it from enemy attacks. It goes without saying that this machine is an offensive and defensive nightmare for anyone who fights it. One thing also very much worth mentioning is that this is a SciComm-equipped machine, meaning that a new type pilot is able to control the precision movements needed to pilot a mobile suit with their mind. Now, apparently this system can be turned off for an old type to pilot the machine, but it's apparently too damn hard to control the thing. Camille at this point tries a beam saber to no effect, so he moves to stick and move tactics, to little success. He finally manages to knock the suit over by pulling a George St. Pierre and wrestling the thing to the ground. The Nemo reinforcements arrive, and 4 starts to struggle with the combat and what she's doing. After 4 starts to feel uneasy due to Camille's new type pressure, she takes off. Now, I mentioned in the previous videos, but one thing to mention is that new types project a sort of psychic pressure in combat. And for cyber new types specifically, this pressure can cause them to have headaches or become physically ill. This is something we're going to see more as the shows go on. So effectively, Camille manages to win the day because his aggression made 4 feel queasy. It's an odd way to win a battle, but a win is a win. Regardless, Kuraba gets their supplies. After this, we see that Amuro is talking with Mirai about her and the children going with them to the Aldumla. The fact of the matter is that with the conflict spreading to Hong Kong, it's going to be hard to get any sort of tickets to outer space, black market, or otherwise. Oh, and Hathaway loses their glider, which is picked up by a lady with green hair. You see, over with the Titans, we had seen that 4 had taken off on her own due to being upset with her handler. And it looks like she's decided to take some shore leave. Thing is, the Titans are not going to let a military asset like a cyber new type just screw off on their own, so they deploy Marine Hyzacs to go after her. Now, one thing I need to specify here is these aren't the actual Marine Hyzac units from Advance of Zeta Reboot. These are just normal Hyzacs that have had some performance tweaks. The reason that they actually have a different paint scheme is that these are the Federation versions, whereas the Titans versions are actually green like an old-school Zaku. During the process of Amuro and Beltorchka saying their goodbyes, 4 brings back the glider and overhears Amuro's name in conversation, and then spots Camille there as well. At that point, 4 asks Camille for a ride to the old town and starts inquiring about Amuro. There's also Titans agents in the area that are shadowing the group. From there, Camille and 4 bond over hating their names. While this is going on, the Titans kidnap Mirai and her children. So yeah, wonderful dudes here. While driving around, 4 is laying it on pretty thick. But during the discussion, Camille picks up Captain Ben Wooder, threatening to outright attack Hong Kong if the AU does not surrender to them. If they don't comply, Mirai and the kids are dead. After letting the pretty girl know he's a fucking pilot, Camille drops 4 off, but to 4's credit, she fucking hates the tactics that they're using, and also to her credit, from a military perspective, she was a lot more effective in regards to gathering information, by her just effectively going in undercover, no less, just as a normal person. She gathered more intel than a lot of other Titans assets up to this point. Either way, Amuro springs into action. The Luya lady is being a bitch, and the Aldumla starts moving into action as well. Amuro offers himself as a hostage exchange, but then gets sucker punched for his trouble when he tells Ben Wooder how much he sucks. Also, the Titans roach on the deal, and Mirai's boat is snagged by a Hyzac. Hayato's plan to solve this situation is basically a fake surrender. while Camille goes in and saves the hostages with the Mark II. During the struggle, Mirai's boat gets knocked about and Hathaway gets thrown into the ocean. Amuro manages to break free as well, and Camille manages to smoke the Hyzax one by one. After Mirai cuts Amuro's bonds loose, he grabs Hathaway right as Camille keeps fighting. Also, I just want to note, Amuro managed to swim from one boat to another while having his hands tied. That's pretty impressive. At this point, 4's handler bails on the mission with Ben Wooder, leaving the Hyzax to their fate. After Camille manages to force them out of the water, the results of the fight at that point are academic. Regardless, the hostages are safe, and Mirai's kids think that the Gundam is awesome, and Beltorchica is being a bitch for some reason. Sheesh. I wonder what's going to happen with Mirai's kids in the future. I mean, Hathaway does seem to think Gundams are awesome. It's probably nothing. Now, after all that, the Aldumla is still in Hong Kong, but the mayor is asking them to head out, which they mean to listen to. They've still got supplies coming in, though. During the process of resupply, Amuro and Camille have a heart-to-heart about what's going on with 4 and Camille, with Beltorchika chiming in that it might be love at first sight. Thing is, Amuro gives the advice not to get close to 4. Given what happened with Lala, it's obvious as to why. At least for us in the audience. Now, Mirai and Beltorchika get into an argument, and to be honest, I can kind of understand why people don't like Beltorchika at this point of the story. But basically what happens is that Mirai finally gets the chance to fill Camille in on what happened between Lala and Amuro. At this point, I'm just going to say that I need to do an in-depth video on how new types work, but the basic thing here is that because new types can sense one another's feelings, they tend to form bonds with one another very fast. After this, Camille decides to grab a dirt bike and head out on his own. The Titans, on the other hand, are getting ready to unleash the Psycho Gundam on Hong Kong. Camille manages to find 4, but the Sergeant Tailing won't allow her to leave. Granted, I can see why, considering she smacked the guy just a second ago, but he gives her a tracking device and lets her go with Camille. So, the two of them go out on a date, and the two end up kissing. Y'all, that's adorable. Anyway, at this point, 4 tells Camille about her history, that she's a war orphan, doesn't know her real name, and isn't even able to recall her past. Now, Camille seems to get why she feels a certain way about it, but basically encourages her to look to the future and create new memories. Their tender moment is unfortunately interrupted by an explosion. Yep, the Titans are bombing the city. Great! And 4 realizes at that moment that Camille is the Mark II pilot the instant that he starts sending off waves of aggression, seeing the fight start. On top of that, when 4 sees the Psycho Gundam, she starts to lose the plot and then runs off. At this point, Amuro launches in the Rick Diaz to fight the Psycho Gundam and the Titans' forces. The Psycho itself is being piloted by Ben Wooder, but like I mentioned earlier, an old type piloting this thing is going to have a hell of a time, and not in the fun way. Even so, the fight is on. During it, 4 manages to get Wooder's attention, and Camille grabs Amuro's. We see that Hyzax have been deployed on top of the Nemos from the Aldumla. Camille ends up getting back to the Aldumla, and he gets slapped. No surprise there. This is what happens when you go out on a date in the middle of a fucking military mission. You didn't have official shore leave, young man. Always clear that with your superior officer. Either way, he heads out into the thick of it as the Titans and Kuraba continue to clash. On top of that, 4 starts to crash out and destroy everything. So that's not good. Camille engages 4 in combat, and they immediately sense one another. Camille tries to talk her down, but doesn't have much success. So when Amuro gets an opening, he takes a shot and knocks both Gundams into the water. Camille ends up hopping on the Psycho Gundam's back, exits the Mark II, and keeps talking to 4, but she's pretty much consigned to her fate. Though Camille tries to offer Ayuk help in regards to regaining her memories, she thinks only the Titans can do it. At this point, Amuro grabs Camille and states that he's going to destroy the Psycho Gundam system core to try to disable it, but he's just not able to pull it off. He does manage to land a shot, but he also gets the hand taken off the Rick Diaz by a stray shot from a Hyzax. Still, 4 retreats and Camille takes out his frustration on a Federation pilot that picked a really bad day to piss the kid off. At this point, Mirai gives Amuro some last-minute advice to take care of Camille and get him back into space. And thank fuck she tells Beltorchika to just relax. Jesus, I feel like somebody should walk in front of this lady with a sign telling her that. Maybe Wu Fei will do it. Regardless, Mirai takes off safely as the Alduma leaves Hong Kong, resupplied and ready for the next engagement. After all that...
Did you want to come up to my room? I made a fresh pot of coffee.
Jesus, lady. You guys have known each other for like 2 weeks. I feel like this woman's wearing a shirt under that blue getup that says I fuck on the first date. Anyway, Beltorchika seems to think that Amuro wants to return to space, and is using Camille as an excuse to go back. The Titans aren't giving up, by the way. Good old Captain Ben here is in pursuit and dangling Four's memories like a carrot in front of her, and is threatening to shut down the Murasame New Type lab. As for Karaba, they have maps of the New Guinea Titans base, and it's still under construction. They also get notifications that the Argama is going to be in orbit on the same day, which is before they expected it. Either way, the Titans attack with a company of Hyzax and the Psycho Gundam, with Amuro heading out to try and drop them. After that, the Nemo units head out to engage as well as the Mark II. Now during the battle, 4 crashes out again, and Karaba is able to actually fend them off. Later on, in the same day though, the Titans launch another attack that ends up with 4 and Camille engaging again. But this ends with 4 and Camille somehow in the middle of a firefight, managing to have a heart-to-heart, where Camille pours out his soul to 4 to try to get her to come with him up to space. Thing is, she points a gun at him. But because she can't come with him, she has no desire to. He needs to go. But to help him out, she crashes the Psycho Gundam into the side of the Titan's vessel to buy them time. At this point, Camille manages to get on a shuttle that will take the Mark II up into orbit. He does so successfully, rejoins the Argama in satellite orbit, and is welcomed back by the Argama's crew. In another part of space, Giamatov Hyman overlooks the assembly of the Titan's fleet. We also see that Paptimus Shirako has returned as well. He gave Giamatov a sworn proposal that if Shirako ever turns on him, Giamatov can kill him, and he signed it in blood. There's just one problem, dude. Red means void in contracts. Anyway, as for the Ayug, they're out by Side 2 and haven't detected any enemies in the area, trying to figure out where the Titan's fleet is, and Camille starts a fight, and Bright punches everyone, and Emma sees right through Camille and why he's acting the way he is, figuring out that he met a girl. Regardless, the Titans are up to something. A new operation, specifically, but we don't have any new details yet. What we do have is one of my favorite Titans mobile suits being debuted here. This is the Gabthly. The RX-110 Gabthly is a prototype transformable mobile suit, made at the Luna 2 development base. Similar to mobile suits we've been seeing in this series thus far, the Gabthly is another one with a transformation gimmick. Granted, this shouldn't be surprising given that Shirako is the one who developed it. The suit stands 18 meters tall, and at max weight, weighs 56 tons. Like I mentioned, the gimmick with this mobile suit is that it transforms between a mobile suit mode and a mobile armor mode, and has a mono eye like many Zeon units from the 1 Year War, and many Titans units from the Gryps War. It has 2 megaparticle cannons, 4 beam sabers, 2 claw arms, and also uses a long-range rifle called a Fedayeen rifle, which also has a beam bayonet on it as well for use in melee combat. It's a very versatile mobile suit, and its mobile armor mode can actually reach acceleration up to 5 Gs. Like many other mobile suits at this point, the suit is also using Gundarium alloy armor. Oh great, Jerid's here. He and a female ensign named Moar Pharaoh do a mock duel with Shirako, who gets a bit touchy with her mobile suit. Stranger danger! That's her purse! She don't know you! Anyway, we hear a bit of Shirako's philosophy, and the guy's egotistical as all fuck, and you can tell that he's just a snake. He's basically moving towards overthrowing the Earth's government. And then he tries to say, oh, but the ruler of Earth will probably be a woman. Oh, God, he's Jonathan McIntosh. Anyway, Jerid somehow manages to stumble on the Argava, meaning not only does he fail upwards, but he also has the devil's luck. The Ayug mobilizes with Emma and Eric Diaz and Camille in the Mark II alongside a Nemo unit. Jerid fires at them and misses and blames the targeting system because nothing is ever his fault. Shockingly, he manages to drop the Rick Diaz, but Emma gets away safely. He also lands a good shot on Camille as well. Now at this point, Jerid gets backup from Ensign Pharaoh, and Camille gives Emma's pod to the Nemo unit. Jerid, however, does something dumb and grapples the Mark II, which opens him up to get shot in the back. Backup is here in the form of a transport that's being piloted by Fa Yuri, who detaches a second vehicle from the top of it. Now, the shuttle grabs Camille, who has been thrown from the Mark II at this point, and saves him from possibly ending up in the cold vacuum of space forever. You see, Lieutenant Appley is here, and now it's time for a Sign of Zeta. Appley makes the Gab Fleet pilots look like fools, and they bail out, with Appley taking out the mobile suit that they left behind. Fa and Camille are reunited with a big hug, with both Bright and Emma hilariously walking in on them, then awkwardly leaving. Anyway, Jerid continues to fail up, and is given a combat team by Shirako, which is sort of like putting the Washington Generals in the NBA Finals. Over with the AUG, we finally get to see the mobile suit that this series is named after. This is the Zeta Gundam. The MSZ-006 Zeta Gundam is an experimental mobile suit, and the first AUG mobile suit from Project Zeta to have a fully functional transformation system. To say this mobile suit is a beast would be a major understatement. As you saw earlier, it can transform into a fighter jet mode called the Wave Rider, giving it substantially increased flight speed. In mobile suit mode, it stands 19.85 meters tall, weighs over 60 tons at max loadout weight, and like the Rick Diaz, this mobile suit uses Gundarium Gamma alloy. It also has 8 vernier thrusters, which effectively gives you one of the most maneuverable mobile suits in service during the entirety of the Gryps War, if not the most. As for weaponry, this thing has a lot, but surprisingly most of it is concealed. You see, these spots on the forearms normally open up and can fire grenades. The head has 2 60mm Vulcan guns, and the hip armor actually conceals 1 beam saber per side, which in Wave Rider mode actually turn into beam guns. However, the grenades in the forearm can also be switched out for anchor wires to immobilize enemy mobile suits. The main weapon is an E-Pack beam rifle that also has a beam bayonet for close-range combat. There's also a shield that it uses, but it's admittedly a thin one, so it doesn't cover a lot of area. To block anything, you have to be very precise. It also has the optional equipment of the Hyper Mega Launcher, which is a powerhouse of a weapon that's basically a small gunship without a cockpit. It can be used like a standard rifle, or can also be mounted on the Wave Rider. Now, the key difference with this mobile suit and others that the AUG are using at the time is the biosensor in the cockpit. Developed by Anaheim Electronics, this was another step in attempting to let new types better control their mobile suits. The biosensor effectively allows a pilot to use the suit with mental commands on top of the normal control schemes, similar to Psycommu units that Zeon had used during the 1-Year War, and the Titans have used up to this point in the usage of the Psycho Gundam. However, this system has a bit more extra oomph to it. You see, the biosensor responds to the psychic energies that are emanating from a new type in combat. Now, you'll see the full extent of this as we go along, but just know that this suit has more tricks up its sleeve due to this technology. Needless to say, everyone's pretty pleased with the new mobile suit, and Fa confirms that she is a pilot cadet at this point. On top of that, she also confirms that the AUG mobile suit production has ramped up as well. We see exactly what that includes, with a couple mobile suits that Ensign Rekoa will be taking back to the Argama. Also, Benken Heckener has a present for Emma. Oh, that's so cute. Also, is it just me, or are Bright and Lieutenant Emma basically going from being commanding officers to parents of the damn Argama? Back with the Titans, Jerid is meeting the combat team, quote-unquote, and one of them flat out tells him that she doesn't want to kill people. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. Maybe this isn't such an upgrade. Anyway, the other pilots are Chief Petty Officer Sarah Zabairov. That's a mouthful. And a trainee named Sidale, who is smart enough to not take Jerid's shit. Good on her, because in a sensible military, and I've probably said this before, this guy would be court-martialed for conduct unbecoming an officer, among other issues. But then again, the Titans aren't a sensible military. So, Jerid leads an assault with Sarah and Sidale in Marasize. And yes, as you'd expect, Jerid is a shit commander. Ensign Rekoa notices something in the distance as they're flying, but it's not the Argama. So they basically ran right into Jerid and the girls. So let's go ahead and break down the mobile suits that Rekoa has with her. Well, one's not a mobile suit. First, we're going to talk about the FXA-05D G-Defensor. The thing about this is that it's a fighter craft that has a similar concept to the G-Fighter from the 1-Year War, and it's meant to support the Mark II. It is a Gundarium alloy-coated machine that's a little under 40 meters in length with a 27-meter wingspan. Weapons-wise, it has a mini-laser gun on the cockpit capsule, 4 Vulcan guns mounted on the sides of the missile pods, and then, of course, 2 14-missile-carrying tube missile launchers, and then a beast of a beam weapon called the long rifle. Now, what can happen with this thing is it merges with the Mark II. The G Defensor will have the fighter, the core fighter, launch out and away from it as it merges with the Mark II, creating the Super Gundam, which of course lends the Mark II its firepower and added maneuverability. As for the other suit, we have the MSA-005 Methis. Now, this dainty little thing is admittedly kind of adorable. I mean, here's the sprite from Super Robot Wars. It's just cute. Anyway, it stands 26 meters tall in mobile suit mode, but condenses down to 6 meters in mobile armor mode. Yet this thing is another transformable suit, and has an even more seamless transformation than other AUG suits, and yes, including the Zeta. This was actually the first transformable mobile suit created by Anaheim Electronics, and to speak to how easily it transformed, later suits used by the Federation, such as the Zeta 2 and the Riesel, would base their transformations on this mobile suit. Now, as a dogfighting mobile suit, it doesn't pack that much of a wallop. It's of course enough to drop other mobile suits, but it's nowhere near the raw firepower of other mobile suits that the AUG uses, like the Gundams or the Hyakushiki. Its weaponry is 2 beam guns that are powered by the suit's generator that fold out like pistols, a beam saber, and then a grenade launcher in the left forearm. Funnily enough, if you're a Super Robot Wars fan, since I've already shown off the sprite here, or rather Shirt Dude did, you're probably fond of this suit, not really when it comes to offense, but rather its ability to repair other mobile suits plus its incredible mobility. It doesn't really do this in the anime. It is fast, don't get me wrong, but what it can do when need be is work as an additional power source for the Hyakushiki's Mega Launcher if the need arises. So as you'd expect, Jerid and the girls go immediately on the attack. The Argama picks up on it and sends out Camille and Emma in the Gundams to back up the Methis and the Defensor. Fa also jumps into a Rick Diaz, which is backed up by Apolly in the same model. One thing of note is that with this fight, Shirako basically refuses to send Jerid back up because he engaged without getting permission from his commanding officer. Which, by the way, this isn't the first time he's done that. As the battle commences, Jerid asks the stupid question.
Is that the Gundam Mark II?
Is that the Mark II? Jerid, when was the Mark II a fucking jet? Needless to say, the fight isn't great for the Titans. They're outnumbered 2-1, and even though the Gabsley is an impressive machine, it's not a Gundam. Though technically it is from the same line, it is an RX model. Anyway, Cedelay gets toasted by Camille, and Shirako sees the writing on the walls. Sarah retreats with Jerid following shortly afterwards. Though I have no clue why Shirako says the mission was a success. What? You're rewarding insubordination? The fuck? Anyway, then he gets creepy with Sarah because, well, the guy's a creep. On top of that, Fa gets slapped for taking the Rick Diaz. Man, everybody's getting slapped this episode. Well, Quattro, what's your advice on this?
If you want to stop getting hit, then just stop screwing up.
Also, Emma is confused by the present she got, because she has no fucking clue what's going on here, the poor woman. Now, one thing to go over real quick is that we have a ship to break down. You see, Henkin Beckener is now in command of a ship called the Radish, which is a class called the Irish-class ship. The Irish-class battleship is a mobile suit carrier based on the Argama class, but incorporates concepts of Magellan-class ships to give it extra firepower. It also has a much larger mobile suit transport capacity than an Argama class, but does lack anti-air guns, relying on mobile suit deployments to consistently defend the ship. The ship also carries a twin mega particle gun, with one underneath the ship and one in front of the bridge, and has 5 single-barreled secondary beam guns, 4 on the sides, and 1 beneath the bridge. We see on the Radish that Quattro and Katz are on board with Henkin, and Wong is calling and throwing his weight around. Wong wants Quattro to escort Commodore Blex, but Quattro wisely tells him that they have no clue when the Titans are about to launch a big offensive, and they need all hands on deck. As for the Argama, they're headed to Von Braun's city, which is apparently built around Neil Armstrong's footprint. Even in anime, America is awesome. Remember, folks, be the Americans that Japan thinks we are. At this point, we hear about Operation Apollo. Effectively, the Titans are looking to take Von Braun as a new base of operations. During a move to re-equip the Argama, the Radish spots the Titans' vessels, and Quattro immediately heads out with a few reinforcements. At the same time, Operation Apollo begins for the Titans, being headed up by Jamaicon. The Argama also catches the warning shots set off by the Titans, and insanity immediately starts. Cats gets into the MS Bay, Fa jumps into the Methus, and they're trying to get their best men out into the fight. It goes without saying that the Titans are out in full force. There are ships and Hyzacs everywhere, with enemy fire so thick that you can't sit still for a second. During the course of the battle, Fa struggles with enemy forces, causing Camille to peel off during the thick of the fight to save her. Once Shirako gets his ship closer to Von Braun, he sends off his mobile suits to head into Von Braun City proper. Unfortunately for both Shirako and Jerid, Quattro is here to intercept. Even so, Shirako's plans are to descend to the city and take it over, knowing that the Aeug won't fire if they know the city will get hit. Effectively, he wants to use the city as a human shield and get all the glory. Another thing to mention is that Shirako's presence and intentions are so oppressive that it fucks with many of the new types in the battle. And Jerid, who I don't think is a new type, but it's hard to tell. Either way, everything gets thrown into whack when Marafero gets in the way of Quattro and Jerid's fight, and then Quattro just plants his ass into the ground. Even so, Quattro does have to get bailed out by Camille as the heat gets turned up and the lieutenant orders a retreat. At this point, the Titans threaten to destroy the city if the Aeug continues their attack. Captain Bright orders an official withdrawal of all forces, and the Titans officially win the battle. So yeah, for those thinking that these guys weren't going to continue to be a threat at this point, you were wrong. And this is something that honestly does need mentioning about the war up to this point. So far, we haven't seen the full battle potential of the Titans. We've seen some good mobile suits here and there that were piloted by decent pilots or absolute dipshits. But we have to keep in mind that these guys are Federation Special Forces, meaning that they have numbers and resources that the Aeug does not have, and we have not seen a Titan's military movement up to this point where they are in full force. In this battle, the Aeug had 2 ships and their mobile suit detachments against the 6 or 7 plus mobile suit detachments that the Titans had there. Plus they had Shirako there almost acting like a psychic scrambler. So even with great pilots like Quattro, Camille, and Emma, you still got too many enemy numbers with mobile suits that aren't as good as Gundams necessarily, but they're really not lagging that far behind them. Unlike the 1-year war, the protagonists we're following do not have a massive tech advantage like the White Base did. The jump from a Zaku or a Goof to the RX-78 is a lot bigger than the jump from a Marasai to the Mark II to the Zeta. Anyway, Jamaicon slaps Shirako. That's cool. And he does have a point that the young commander was being overzealous and reckless, but that's all part of Shirako's plan. With the city firmly in Titan hands, the Aeug has to be smart about a counterattack. And it seems like now Quattro is headed to Earth with Blex. Also, Henkin, my bro. She's cute, we all know it. Emma is best girl. But you've got a war to win, man. Focus! Anyway, on Earth, the Commodore and Quattro actually catch Jamitov, but they don't start a confrontation in the hallways. Camille, on his end, is headed to Von Braun to scope it out, and Katz, being a pain in the butt, decides to sneak along with him. With the Federation Assembly, which is where Quattro and Blex are, they have no luck. The Federation is actually considering giving control of the military as a whole to Jamitov, but Blex does suggest that he could put in an emergency motion to stop that from happening, or at least delay it. Now, at this point, Camille's mission goes awry right out of the gate, because Lieutenant Jerid recognizes him immediately. Jerid and Maura detain him at gunpoint, but Katz comes to the rescue, putting Jerid at gunpoint and rescuing Camille, but then they get away from Jerid successfully, but there's still some attacks thrown. They end up swapping guns unintentionally, so on and so forth. Back with Quattro, as he was out and about, he comes back to his hotel and hears gunshots as he enters it. While he was out and about, Commodore Blex was shot while being in bed. Before he dies, he asks Quattro to take over as the leader of Aeug. At the Von Braun, we see the debut of Lieutenant Yazan Gable, who is an asshole. He takes off with a small 4-man team to hunt down the Argama. Emily and Apoli jump into the fray, with Fa not far behind, and Camille is able to sense the conflict. The Titans begin to mobilize and order the air raid alarm in the city to be sounded. The battle is violent, with mobile suits quickly descending to civilian areas and putting average Joes in danger. Rekawa takes off in the Zeta to go after Camille as well, because him being in that mobile suit will make a big difference. Also, the people that are in the air raid shelter that Mora, Camille, and Katz are stuck in Tell Jerid that he sucks ass. We haven't had a one-on-one between Camille and Jerid in this episode, but sure, dude, go ahead and pull up the numbers. Let's just give Jerid another L on the win and loss sheet just because public opinion is now that he sucks. So Camille exits with Cats after they punk Jerid some more, but when a civilian tries to stop Jerid, he punches a child because Jerid's a prick. Yazan does try to keep the Zeta from getting to Camille, but Lieutenant Emma is able to chase him off. At this point, the Zeta becomes the difference maker. Yazan's in a Gaplin, so he's not a bad spot when it comes to mobile suits. As we saw earlier in the show, the Gaplin's really good, but the Zeta is just able to outpace him. At this point, Jamaican's at a spot where he has to withdraw from the city, because he's got no more reinforcements. They all left. Unfortunately for the Ayug, though, the Titans have now been granted control of the Federation military. Since Blex has been killed, he's not there to oppose it. So now, instead of primarily fighting the Titans' forces, it is officially the entire Federation against the Ayug. After the battle, a Hyzak approaches with a white flag, and it's being piloted by Sarah Zabirov. The info she gives to the Ayug is horrifying. The Titans are planning to drop a colony on the moon. Oh, Wong is here. Shut the fuck up, Wong! Anyway, after the meeting that this intel gets spread around on, Cats sees Sarah and gets Twitter-pated, and Sarah gets locked up until she can be trusted. Camille interrogates her, and during the interrogation, she actually name-drops Shirako without being pressured to. Wisely, Camille figures out that she's playing a game here, specifically that if Jamaican fails with this colony drop, it is to Shirako's advantage. For the Titans, though, basically, Jamaican is embarrassed that he had to withdraw from Von Braun, mostly because, as I suggested earlier, Shirako left him there with no reinforcements. So he's doing this to get even with the Ayug. As for the Ayug, Henkin is still distracted while Emma is on board the Radish. Jesus, homie is down bad. Part of the tension with the crew at this point is basically people just being down bad. Kat says love at first sight. Henkin wants to plow Emma like fresh snow. Fa feels a certain type of way about Camille to the point where she's getting clingy and jealous, etc. There's quite a bit of interpersonal drama going on. On the military end, mobile suits are on standby for both sides, as the Titans are planning to hit Von Braun. Yeah, kill everyone. Drop colony, that's the end. Katz gives Sarah a normal suit since they're about to enter combat, but the little idiot is spending too much time talking to a prisoner, where she suggests that Katz take her Hyzak, she emotionally manipulates him, and he fucking falls for it. God, she's not that pretty, dude. Anyway, mobile suits from the Radish launch, with Camille, Emma, and Rekoa leading the charge. Also, Wong is still a fucking idiot. He tells the mayor of Granada not to evacuate the civilians. The fuck? The salvos start from the Radish and the Argama, attempting to alter the course of the colony. This gives away their position, so Yazan and his squad take off to counterattack. The basic strategy here is that the Ayug has to take out the nuclear thrusters to stop the colony. Now, to Sarah's credit, while succoring Katz, she does tell him the weak spot of the enemy mobile armor, but then she just gets in her Hyzak and heads back to Shirako. The battle between Yazan and Camille starts up, with Camille sensing, of course, from Katz that he needs to attack from below, and just nails him. On top of that, Emma manages to destroy one of the colony engines, which changes the colony direction and saves Granada. Oh, Katz, enjoy the detention cell, you little doofus. At this point, Yazan is wanting to continue the assault, but Jamaican isn't having it and wants to return for resupply, which is honestly the smarter move. Yazan, at this point, plans to snake him. He heads out with his squad to launch a direct attack. As for the Ayug, they're speculating on Shirako's ship, but the most they actually do confirm is just the psychic pressure everyone felt. At this point, the Mark II and a detachment of Nemo units are sent after Yazan's guys. Katz, being a yutz, takes the G-Defensor without orders, but Henkin is fine with it. As for Yazan, his plan works. He manages to lure the Ayug right to Jamaican's ship as they fight in the shadow of an old Xeon frigate. During the battle, Camille senses Emma's in trouble and wakes up from a nap. He immediately moves to sortie in the Zeta. Bright, trusting Camille's instincts, sends him out in the Zeta to intercept. As you'd expect, the Zeta's an instant difference maker. At this point, the G-Defensor docks with the Mark II and forms the Super Gundam, which instantly smokes one of the Hyzaks. Even Katz manages to drop someone in his little drop pod, but he gets caught by Yazan, not that it does him much good. It's at this point that Jamaican opens fire on the Radish, but they do not give a rat's ass about their own men being in the crossfire. The whole situation at this point becomes a clusterfuck. Camille and Yazan run out of ammo, Emma tries to rescue Katz from his own stupidity in the Guazine, and then they get trapped by an enemy pilot, so on and so forth. And at this point, the fight is between Camille and Yazan, and it's basically a lightsaber battle. Now, though Emma and Katz get lucky, the fight between Yazan and Camille is intense. Camille, of course, is a new type. He's a very powerful new type, but Yazan, to his credit, is an extremely talented pilot. Thing is, Katz hops into an old Gelgoog, and he manages to hotwire it to fire a single bazooka shot. This gives Camille enough time to get his beam saber back and force Yazan to retreat after he dismembers the suit. At this point, Yazan moves right in front of the bridge. Emma just fires, and Yazan scoots out the way, so she kills Jamaicon. So I'll give Yazan credit on that one. 4D chess from him. I can kind of see why people still hate this dude, but at least respect his skills. He's very good at what he does. At this point, the Argama's looking to pick up Quattro, and stuff between Camille and Fa is getting to the point where Appley is suggesting that they just separate the two, put them on different ships. As for the Titans, Jerid is having issues with Yazan, where Yazan wants to throw the Hyzax overboard. He and Jerid have a dick measuring contest, because they're both the same rank. Jerid can't really order him to do anything. And here's the thing, fellas, there's not that much of a difference between 50 and 51 millimeters. Stop arguing. Oh, and Jerid's in love with Maura as well, so, I mean, in Gundam, this will end well, right? As for Quattro, he's with Hayato, and apparently we're getting a new batch of war orphans. Same sort of deal with before, though, where Hayato's asking Quattro to take up a leadership role. Out in space, the fight is on, once again, this time between Emma and Yazan. Quattro's in a bit of a pickle, though, since he needs to keep a schedule and get back to his men, so he volunteers to go out in a lifeboat to be picked up by the Argama. Speaking of, the Argama launches its own suits to counteract the Titans. But unfortunately, Jerid's MS team, they have a mega launcher prepped for use against the Ayug. Now, Yazan has Emma on the back foot, but then he's ordered to attack the Zeta. The thing is, everyone is sensing aggression, so they know something in this battle isn't right, that there's a setup going on. Now that we have Jerid and Camille in a one-on-one, they're surprisingly evenly matched. Thing is, Camille feels aggression from another angle, and Yazan gets in Jerid's way. Jerid uses this as an opportunity to signal for the mega launcher to fire, but it doesn't work. There's too much new typing in the area that clued Camille in on what was going to happen. So no luck for the Titans on this one. Yazan just catches a stray, and sadly the shuttle gets completely destroyed. So, to be generous for once, I am going to give this fight a draw due to outside interference. After the fight, Camille actually kind of tries to make peace with Fa in his own autistic way, and it surprisingly works! A good move, I guess. Also, we got Quattro back, and he gave a letter from Mirai and the kids to Bright. It's a really heartwarming moment. I don't know if you guys have noticed thus far, but I'm not trying to go into too much detail here on too much interpersonal stuff, because this series of Gundam Explained is more of a war record to give you an idea of how the combat played out, how the war goes, and the specifics of the technology that's used. So, I'm going to say this again, these videos that Shirt Dude and I do are not substitutes for the real thing. So, if you have not watched Zeta already, go watch it, then come back. During a meeting with Captains Bright and Benkener, Quattro confirms the assassination of Commodore Blex. Even with that, the AU has to mobilize to Side 2. In the hangar, they're fixing the Gelgoog to a point where it can actually move. The intention is to infiltrate the Jupitrus, and Rekkoa is headed out in this now ancient Zeon mobile suit. Camille's not too pleased about things, but Rekkoa is determined to take the assignment. For those who don't know, I don't recall if it's been mentioned yet, but the Jupitrus is effectively the flagship of Shirako, though he spends a lot of his time on the Dogo Skier. Speaking of the Dogo Skier, Shirako's being a creepy cult leader to the point where Sarah is now calling him Master. He says some shit about wanting to heal the Earth. The dude's a snake, so nothing he says really means anything. But as it stands, Rekkoa takes off in the repaired Gelgoog to make contact with Shirako, escorted by Camille and the Zeta. Later, Fa is sent out in the Methus after she complains about not seeing things from a woman's perspective to the crew. Again, Wu Fei is just going to be in the corner, reading his book. Anyway, Rekkoa arrives at the enormous Jupitrus, with Camille keeping his distance and observing the situation. Rekua poses as someone wanting to sell the Gelgoog as a collector's item, and one of the Federation staff she talks to tries to get a little too handsy with her. At this point, she sees Shirako on the upper walkway. Unfortunately for Camille, out in space, as he's just chilling, he gets spotted by enemy forces, and Sarah is the one who spotted him, attacking him when she's piloting the Masala, with Camille immediately sensing that Shirako's not the one piloting it this time. As Rekua sneaks around the Jupitrus, she notices they're developing a new mobile suit. Shirako also notes the possibility of an alliance between the Titans and Axis Zeon. When discovered, Rekua plays dumb, and Shirako gets touchy with her. She shoves his hand back and he strikes her. She then gives her name, saying that she's from Side 2. Now during this time, the call comes in about the mobile suit battle outside, and Rekua wonders if Shirako can sense who she is. As for Camille, in the fight, Camille gets backup from Fa and the Methys, and manages to land a hit on the Masala. Now Paptimus originally wants to intervene, but senses that Sarah wants to fight them herself. As for Rekua, she manages to roll a charisma check and gets a nat 20, then knocks out the horny idiot that she tricked. She then gets in the Gelgoog and hightails it out of there. She ends up caught in the battle, but does not get hurt. Fa does take a hit, but Camille's able to lop off the Masala's foot and drive it away. Another thing worth noting is that Rekua is able to recall a lot of the details of the inside of the ship, with her memory being almost photographic. But she hallucinates Paptimus on one of the sheets that she sketched. At this point, I need to mention something specific about Shirako. A thing to note about new types is that many of them create bonds with others very quickly, as I've mentioned before. At the same time, some new types have some abilities that are a cut above others. For some, it's just raw power. For others, it's almost like they have eyes in the back of their head. Think Amuro Ray on that one. And for some, they have the ability to influence others' feelings easily to a point of enslavement. And that is what Shirako is able to do specifically. The reason he comes across like a creepy cult leader is basically because he is. And you'll notice the women who serve under him don't serve like officers under normal command, but rather like women with severe Stockholm Syndrome. It's something to keep in mind as the story continues. Anyway, Quattro is headed on a mission to Von Braun, while the rest of the AUG focus on Side 2. There's a couple things of note here in the discussions on the ship. While Katz is giving Emma lunch, she notes that the Argama at the moment is short-staffed. On top of that, intelligence is reporting that there's only one ship going from Von Braun to Side 2, the Alexandria. It docked with a supply ship, and the ship was carrying chemical weaponry. Possibly G3 gas. Now, we discussed G3 in the last episode and in the 1 Year War series, so we all know what that stuff is capable of. The situation, effectively, has become much more grave. As for the Titans, for some reason, Jerid has control of the mobile suit operations around Side 2, continuing his streak of failing upward. At this point, they're considering the Antarctic Treaty null and void. Not that they didn't before, but they intend to deploy gas at a colony to try and force the AUG to surrender. As for the AUG themselves, they have actually moved to protect Side 2, but the mayor of one of the colonies is getting antsy and wants to snake the AUG. A ship covered by an asteroid moves past Colony 35 and opens fire. Jerid's war crime team heads towards Colony 25, and the mayor tries to surrender to the Titans, even having one of his men shot when they refuse. Now the Titans, well, what do they think? They don't fucking care. The only thing on the menu for them is genocide. The Argama is close to the area, and they send out the Zeta and the Mega Launcher, and the Methys, piloted by Rekua. 3 Hyzacs connect the G3 canister, and though the AUG tries to stop them, the Nemo forces that they are sending in are spread too thin. They can't mount a proper counteroffensive. Camille takes a long shot at the Alexandria, but only manages to destroy its cover. The Argama launches the rest of its mobile suit detachment, having Emma prioritize the destruction of the G3 canister. Now, Camille does get to it first, but Maura and Jerid head out to keep him away from it. Now we get another Jerid versus Camille fight, where Camille keeps Jerid on the move away from the bulk of the Titans' forces. Jerid manages to get the drop on Camille during the process, but gets caught by the beam bayonet of Camille's mega launcher. Good news is that Emma's team actually gets to the G3 canister, and Katz of all people manages to destroy it. Maura interferes in the fight with Jerid and Camille, but Katz gets there to back him up. I'm going to actually score this fight a draw in our little tally, even though Camille had him on the back foot. After the battle, the AUG heads to Colony 1, and nobody's buying what the mayor is babbling about in regards to trying to cover up his cowardice. Bright and company meet with him and basically give him a warning. Ally with the Titans, and you're fucked. Back with Quattro, Wong mentions that Axis has left the asteroid belt, and gets pissy with Quattro not knowing about what's going on in there. Regardless, Quattro is being asked to make contact with Axis Zeon to help oppose the Titans. He explains what we already know about Minerva just being a figurehead. As for the Titans, Yazan is launching a substantial team of mobile suits, while Maura and Jerid are sent out to set up an ambush on the Argama after Yazan and his men will attack them. Now, after some hijinks involving the War Orphans, Yazan's team attacks the Argama and the Radish, who deploy their mobile suit teams. Thing is, Yazan's men hold their fire and draw out the mobile suit teams from the AU. From below the Argama, the Alexandria and 2 reinforcement ships open fire. Camille and Fa peel off to aid the Argama, while Emma and Apolly lead the rest of the mobile suit forces. Bright has the forces move to a nearby abandoned colony, realizing that he's been outmaneuvered. Jerid and Mora manage to land a good hit on the Argama, putting the ship into a panic. Camille manages to engage Jerid, with Emma coming in to back up Camille and take on Maura. The fight between Jerid and Camille is pretty intense this time, with more cat and mouse games. Now, Fa, during the battle, gets distracted by the fire in the residential module, to the point where she actually exits her Nemo to go grab Haro and then check on the kids. She manages to protect them, but eats a door to the face when another explosion rocks the ship. Maura comes in again to back Jerid up, but Camille keeps moving to just back up the Argama. At this point, the battle is a complete clusterfuck, with Camille blasting Titans and also having to fend off Jerid. He almost gets a clear shot on him, but Maura gets in between them, sacrificing herself to save Jerid's life. Jerid comes in aggressively for revenge, but Camille owns him pretty easily. We're definitely giving Jerid the L here, because even with backup, and even with somebody sacrificing themselves to try to keep the dude alive, he still couldn't beat Camille in a straight fight. At this point, he tries a kamikaze dive on the Argama, and Emma just peels off one of Jerid's arms and some of the thrusters on his mobile suit, driving him away. At this point, the Titans are forced to withdraw. They did manage to do some damage and take out a share of AUG's suits, but the Titans took a lot of losses as well. Difference being, though, is that the Titans can afford it. Still, the important thing is that Jerid took the L. Anyway, Emma is given credit for her defense of the ship, but she gives credit to Camille and then asks Bright not to punish Fa for her actions during the battle. But Bright takes it as the possibility of Fa not being a good fit for piloting. As for Fa herself, Bright commends her for protecting the living module and the kids, and Camille reflects on the death of Maura. At this point, the Argama is going to be repaired at Von Braun on the moon. With Fa refusing to take the kids to Armstrong Park, they take off on their own. At this point, we see Sarah and 2 other pilots. One is piloting the Masala, but the other 2 suits are brand new. This is the Herbo Burble. Well, that's what I call it. The actual name is the Humbrabi. The RX-139 Humbrabi is another mobile suit developed with the input of Paptimus Scirocco, also featuring a mobile armor transformation mode like the Masala. It actually features a much more streamlined transformation than the other suits, with the hope of making it much more palatable for mass production. Another note of this suit's design is that it has not 1, not 2, but 5 mono eyes all over its body to continue to keep track of enemies. The suit stands a little under 20 meters tall in mobile suit mode, and weighs just under 57 tons at max weight, and is coated in Gundarium alloy. As for the armaments, it has 2 attached beam guns that are also doubling up as beam sabers. It has 2 back-mounted beam rifles, 2 claws it can use, and a tail lance. That is exactly what it sounds like. The mobile suit has a tail, it can stab you with it. On top of that, it can also use the Fedayeen rifle that the Gabthly uses, or use the Hyzax beam rifle if need be. It also has a weapon called a Sea Serpent that uses electric shocks to immobilize enemy mobile suits. In conjunction with other weapons of the same type, a net called a Spider Web can be used to disable enemy suits as well. Either way, Sarah is sent into Von Braun undercover to do some damage. Also, Camille and Fa are headed into the city to find the kids after they ran off. During each of their trips inside the city, Sarah manages to sense Camille and ducks into a department store to avoid him and Fa, but Camille still senses her. Sarah manages to avoid them though, but she's feeling weird about this whole situation. Camille asks Fa to keep looking around the park for the kids, while Camille goes off on his own. Sarah manages to get past a security guard and does what she's actually here for, planting a device in one of the pipes of the pipe system. Camille seems to sense who he thinks is for, but he sees it's Sarah and gives chase. Camille stops her, and she bullshits some story to get Camille to ease up on her. Then, Camille, rather nicely, buys her ice cream, and Fa catches them being stupid, but still, Camille gives Sarah her ice cream and they chat a bit about life effectively. He then confronts her about how she treated cats, and basically warns her about what will happen if they see each other in combat. Now at that point, Sarah has a bit of a conscience crisis, warning Camille not to return to the Argama because she rigged the pipeline with a bomb. Camille instructs Fa to head to the Argama and let Bright know about what's going on, and he heads to the pipe room to see if he can do something about it. Bright gives the order to bring in Wong and Quattro and order an evacuation. Camille manages to find the bomb, but it falls further into the piping. At this point, Camille tackles Sarah and captures her. Appeley manages to find Camille in the park and gets him back to the Argama, which just barely manages to escape the spaceport. The Titans' mobile suits get detected, and then they attack the Argama. Camille gets his hands on one of the herbal burbles and manages to damage it, but the other gives him a little trouble. Now, Fa notices that Sarah managed to escape the Argama and tries to pursue, but it doesn't work. Camille has been trying to get her to see reason and leave the Titans, but she's pretty much too far gone at this point. After that, Fa is under the assumption that the kids were caught in the explosion, but she finds out that they never left in the first place. They just hid in the shower. They hate baths, so it was the one place that Fa would never look for them. After that, the Argama takes off without repairs, but with the intention of still contacting Axis Xeon. Quattro recommends that they should head for the moon for repairs afterwards, but Wong is adamant of the opposite. Shockingly, Wong does something nice. He gives the kids drinks from the vending machine. I guess he did his one good deed for the decade. There's also some tension between Rekkawa and Quattro is cryptic about what's going on. Oh, and great, Shirako's back, and he's asking about Yazan and whatever. Yazan's been brought on Shirako's ship, so him and his team are under Shirako's command now. The Ayug spots Shirako's ship, not sure what they're wanting to do, but Wong thinks that they have the same idea. Admittedly, he is right, and Quattro is willing to lead a mobile suit assault. He stops to talk with Rekkawa, asking for her to back him up and be the extra power source for the Mega Launcher. Quattro noticed that Rekkawa got rid of all her plants. She used to have a ton of them in her room, and they have a pretty good heart-to-heart that actually ends with Quattro kissing her. After the smooching session, Camille gets mad at Quattro, and the mobile suits launch into combat. Now, Rekkawa is taking out the Gelgoog this time around, which admittedly seems risky, considering it's not armed. With the Titans, Yazan is not too fond of the Herbal Burble right now, but he manages to move past Shirako's creep factor, and he still plans on piloting it after talking to him. Now, after catching the Ayug's mobile suits on scope, Paptimus actually tells Yazan don't deploy yet, choosing instead to send out a detachment of Galbaldi Betas and Marasai. The numbers don't work in the Titans' favor at the start, but Paptimus keeps the pressure on them. Rekkawa connects the Gelgoog to the Mega Launcher, and while aiming the gun, Quattro can actually feel the pressure from Paptimus, and it causes him to miss his first shot. He connects with the second, though, hitting the mobile suit ramp. A third shot goes right across the bridge. And then, after that, Shirako sends out Yazan. The fourth shot almost connects with Yazan himself, doing more damage to the ship. Quattro sends Rekkawa back to the Argama, and when Rekkawa senses Paptimus, she instead goes after his ship. At this point, Yazan shoots down a Nemo that is an obvious retreat because he's a dick, and then he goes after the Zeta, immediately putting Camille on the back foot. Now, luckily for him, Rekkawa actually arrives just in time and hockey checks Yazan out of the way. Good way to use the bulk of the Gelgoog, all things considered. It actually has a bit more heft than the Humbrabi. Believe it or not, a Gelgoog weighs about 10 tons more. Now, on the Argama, Wong tells Bright to have Fa deploy in the Methys, but Bright turns it down. Yazan is able to put Camille and Rekkawa on the defensive, but they are saved by a bunch of unknown mobile suits opening fire on the Titans. These are the Gaza C. The AMX Gaza C is a mass-production transformable mobile suit developed by Axis Xeon. Another Gundarium alloy suit, this suit stands at 22.5 meters in mobile suit mode, weighing 72.5 tons at max weight. A quick and maneuverable suit, it's got a simple armament of its leg claws, a beam saber, a small linked set of beam guns on its back, and a weapon called a knuckle buster, which is basically just a big beam rifle with a much higher output. Paptimus and the Dogos Gear retreat from the battle. Camille and Rekkoa get into a short argument, which surprises Camille. Rekkoa herself not able to stop thinking about Shirako either. Now, as for the leader of the Gaza mobile suits that just saved the Ayug, we see that the leader of those suits is none other than the regent to the Zabi family, Haman Karn. The Zeon Transport is a Guadon-class flagship. A successor to the Guazine, the Guadon is also a red-colored ship meant for long-range cruising and the ability to hold off multiple ships simultaneously. It also has 2 mobile suit catapults on the top and a mobile suit launcher at the bottom of the ship as well. There's no record on how many ships it can carry, but it's been estimated as close to 100. When we see the interior of the ship, you will see it is massive. At this point, the ship is the flagship of Axis Zeon, armed with an unspecified number of mega particle guns and anti-air machine guns. At this point, Wong and Bright are going to head over to Axis, alongside Rekkoa, Camille, and Quattro. Their shuttle gets a little spook from a Gaza Sea, with Quattro thinking it was Haman, who they see in the shuttle bay. Both Camille and Quattro can feel her presence, with Quattro getting visibly angry. As we already know, Haman's an incredibly powerful new type, so the pressure she gives off is very distinctive. At this point, Haman introduces Wong and the Ayug to Minerva Zabi, who is surrounded by a massive amount of troops. Now, as you'd expect, Quattro is not pleased by the sight. He was quite fond of Minerva, so he doesn't like seeing her used like this. Haman beckons Quattro to approach, with Minerva calling Char by his real name, which, for the rest of the episode, I'm going to do as well. Now, Char gets close enough to Minerva, which puts everyone on edge, examining her closely and basically declaring that Haman's turned her into a robot. At this point, Haman and Char get confrontational, with Char being restrained by Zeon soldiers. Haman holds them at gunpoint to stop things and detains the Ayug detachment. Char and Camille get into a mock fight to get Char out of their detainment room, with Char honestly hitting him a lot harder than he needed to. Wong captures the soldier that comes in to check on them, and Char heads out by himself. Camille and Rekkoa head out to follow, but Bright gives them 15 minutes to get back to the shuttle. Char goes out to find Haman, and he manages to find her and holds her at gunpoint. At this point, Char states that he's never betrayed anyone in his entire life, ever. Right. Regardless, Haman manages to corner Char, but he gets backup from Rekkoa and Camille. Rekkoa ends up getting shot by Haman, who then retreats. During this, Camille makes a good point that it was fucking stupid to attack Haman, but he does have his reasons. During their escape, Apolly gets hit, but Char manages to get them an opening, alongside Camille shooting some explosives to cover their escape as they get onto the shuttle. At this point, the Argama mobilizes its mobile suit forces after deploying dummy asteroids to screw with enemy radar. Haman preps her mobile suits to launch, but it's the Titans that are here to fight, with Yazan and 2 of his closest men, Lieutenants Dunkel Cooper and Ramses Hassa, which are in their suits alongside a detachment of Galbaldi Betas. During the battle, Camille gets overzealous and gets caught in the spider web deployed by the Yazan team, and the Zeta gets disabled. Rekkoa instead gets into the thick of things by tackling Yazan. Now, Camille manages to get his suit back and operational and wake back up, and then Quattro comes in to help him as well. Yazan manages to do heavy damage to the Methus, but he does get caught off guard by a squad of Nemo suits, and suits from the Radish coming in to save the day, led by Lieutenant Emma and Katz. Oh, and Rekkoa is still looking for Shirako. Speaking of that creep, he now offers his service to the Zabi family, securing an alliance between Shirako's forces and Axis Zeon, effectively capitalizing on Char's mistake. At this point, Emma and Henkin talk about the Argama's biggest problem. They've managed to resupply them with stuff from the Radish, but the crew is beyond exhausted. Now, on the plus side for Henkin, Emma hints about letting him take her out on a date. Nice! Anyway, while the kids try to help in the hangar, we see that the Zeta and the Methys are in very rough shape, alongside the Hyakushiki. Also, apparently, Quattro's snubbing Reccoa. Astanage mocks Camille for lecturing someone on relationships, which is where we get the angry Camille face meme from. After that, Reccoa gets out of medbay with Fa's help, and we finally get a bit of Reccoa's background. You see, when she was a kid, she got separated from her parents during the 1-year war. She spent time as a resistance fighter, fighting Zeon and effectively losing all of her friends during the course of that war. She stuck with the Federation afterwards as an officer, but joined the AUG soon after. She confesses that she's the type of person who's looking for constant excitement, but she thinks she'd settle down if she found the right guy. She says this in a very sullen expression in both English and Japanese, by the way, which something to keep in mind. She also asks Fa not to go down the same road that she did. Now, I know I've been light on character stuff this episode, but I felt the need to discuss Reccoa because we didn't really know her background up until now, or why she did the things that she did, volunteering for the missions she did. And this gives insight into choices that she will also make in the future. As for the Titans, Yazan's on edge, wanting to go after the Argama, but Paptimus is resistant. However, he lets Yazan do as he pleases in going after the AUG, while Paptimus focuses on forging the alliance between the Titans and Zeon. Wong is causing issues on the Argama, wanting them to keep on the offensive. The Argama, instead, is moving to dock with the Lavian Rose, and Bright is putting his foot down on this one because they've taken way too much damage. Now, as for Reccoa, she and Char have a discussion when prepping for battle when she refuses to even look at him. She's clearly not pleased for having been snubbed while she was in the medbay, especially after Char went to the point of actually kissing her. The Argama and the Radish launch mobile suits to counter Yazan's forces, which have also deployed decoys. Reccoa is also clearly not in her right mind. She almost gets spanked by Ramses and is barely saved by Char. Now her, Camille, and Char move to check out the rear guard and see this Marsai squadron they supposedly brought with them. Now Reccoa is ordered to return to the Argama at this point, and the Yazan team uses the chaos of the battle to their advantage, with the mobile suit deployments having been duped by mobile suits that are actually decoys. Reccoa freezes up in battle, and during this, Yazan picks her apart. She does try to ram him, but he impales her with the tail of the Humbrabi. At this point, Reccoa is out of her fucking mind. She exits the Methys, and Yazan just grabs her when she's rendered unconscious after the Methys explodes. It goes without saying that the Argama got outplayed on this one. Bright again has to tell Wong to zip it on the constant pressure and the fact that they need repairs. But surprisingly, Wong finally agrees. Also, Camille decks Char in the face for being so cold to Reccoa, where Camille honestly has a point. Char's been so laser focused on the military aspect and let Haman Karn get to him to a point where he forgot the personal elements of his own crew, and it cost them. The Radish ends up taking off after they land at the Lavian Rose, leaving the Argama alone with the crew's tensions after the loss of Reccoa. Wong is now off the ship, thank God, and the Argama has been ordered to help with the operation at Kilimanjaro in Africa to support Karaba as they attack the Titans. Char states that the Argama is just there to give fire support, but Camille flat out calls him a coward for not wanting to send mobile suit support. Now granted, the Argama doesn't have the resources it needs to take Kilimanjaro, but Camille is not hearing it. At this point, the Titans receive a new mass production mobile suit. This thing is called the Barzam. The RMS-154 Barzam is fucking ugly. I hate this thing. This thing is meant to be the replacement for the Gym 2, and takes notes from the Gundam Mark II on its overall design, or so they say. It doesn't really explain why it has a mono eye and no pelvis, but okay. Anyway, it's lightly armored, stands over 24 meters tall, and weighs over 62 tons at max weight, also armored in Gundarium, Natch. Weapons-wise, the Barzam has 2 beam sabers and a beam rifle with a grenade launcher. It can also be equipped with a Vulcan pod, a hardpoint shield, and can use weapons from other Titans mobile suits as well. At this point, Yazan's keeping on the attack when it comes to pressuring the Argama, not letting them not feel the pressure, launching with his team and a bunch of Barzams to back him up. Just as the Argama gets in position to support Karaba, missiles get launched at the Argama, where they counterattack. Yazan's team arrives as well, with Yazan giving the order to capture the Zeta Gundam. The Humbrabi units manage to grab the Zeta again with Sea Serpents, but Char comes in to back him up. However, he takes a hard hit and starts spiraling toward the Earth. Camille heads to help him, and Bright gives the order for he and Char to instead link up with Karaba. Now, Camille manages to save Char since the Zeta can actually handle re-entry and also act as a shield for the Hyakushiki from the friction of the re-entry process. On the Earth, we see the Aldumla already engaged in a hellacious battle. Char and Camille land on the summit, and we see that Jamitov Hyman is here at this base. Karaba's Nemo forces keep pushing up the mountain, but they do get a surprise. The Psycho Gundam is here. Now, through Camille and Char, they find the reservoir for the base and start to dive in, but they also spot the Psycho Gundam, but manage to hide from it. Camille doesn't sense 4, though, so Char dives into the water to see if he can look into the base, and Camille disobeys orders and follows him in. During the trek inside, Camille's new type senses go off rather intensely, and they move towards where it stems from. It finally gets to a point where Char can feel the same thing, and even though Char advises against it, the two continue on. What we find is 4 Murasame basically being tortured by the Titans under Jamitov Hyman's direct orders. By the way, you wanna know what all this torture's for? It looks really painful, right? It's for testing a remote control. Yeah, he put her through all that just to see if she doesn't have to be inside it to pilot it. The fuck? It goes without saying that even though we don't see much of Jamitov, he is a fucking sadist. Char and Camille spot him, but they aren't able to kill him. He hides behind bulletproof glass and seals Char and Camille in a room away from where he is, but 4 is currently in. At this point, she doesn't recognize Camille, or so it seems. She seems to be in a complete trance, which Quattro immediately recognizes. He wants to shoot her to stop her from operating the Psycho Gundam, but Camille stops him. At this point, we see that none other than Amuro Ray is leading the charge for Karaba. He's also got a really dope mobile suit on his own. This bad boy, this mobile suit is the successor to the Gelgoog, known as the Dija. The MSK-008 Dija is a prototype mobile suit developed by Karaba. They originally designed it after the Rick Diaz, but as you can see, it has more in similarity in its looks and outfitting to the Gelgoog than the Rick Diaz, which the Rick Diaz honestly just feels like the next generation of the Dom and the Rick Dom. A lot of former Xeon engineers were involved in its development, thus the design of the suit being the way that it is. Funnily enough, Amuro pilots this suit to basically show the former Xeon pilots he works with that he's on their side, because they would get really bothered by Amuro in a Gundam. But as you can tell by the coloring on the torso of this mobile suit, he actually had the paint job altered to be similar to the Gundam from the 1-Year War. As for the weaponry, the suit has a 60mm Vulcan on its head and also uses a beam Naginata like the Gelgoog. It normally uses a beam rifle that is the same model as the Hyakushikis, but it could also equip the same clay bazooka that the Hyakushiki uses with the same ammo loadouts. It can also use the Zeta Gundam's Hyper Mega Launcher if need be. One fun thing to note about this is that we are now in a war where Char Aznable and Amuro Ray are allies, where Char is piloting a mobile suit that looks like a Gundam, and Amuro is piloting a mobile suit that looks like a Gelgoog. Oh, how the turntables. Anyway, Camille tries to get 4, but gets pulled back. The whole situation is striking a very rough chord for Amuro, given the obvious parallels between 4's relationship with Camille and Char's relationship with Lala Soon. Later on, Char takes command of the ground forces and is hesitant to send an attack so quickly after the last one. Char also has a back and forth with Camille over whether or not 4 can be saved at this point. Camille dismisses Char's statements as hollow theories, but in this series we have seen that Char has seen all of it firsthand. We in the audience know he understands this better than anyone. At this point, Camille takes the time to infiltrate the Kilimanjaro base under the cover of darkness, seeing a new mobile suit model, but going after 4 to try to rescue her. She senses him as well, and runs to Camille as they embrace, which is actually a pretty cute scene, I won't lie. Somehow, Jerid is here, unfortunately, and spots Camille with 4. Now, Camille notices that her behavior has changed quite a bit, and she's getting some Vietnam flashbacks as they talk. Also, who stores a gun in a fridge? Anyway, one thing that's kind of obvious is that 4's mental condition is degenerating. The psychotherapy that she's been put through is tearing her apart. Camille takes her in front of her doctor, who recognizes Camille. The doctor tries to get other members of the Titans to come in there, but Camille knocks a dude out. After knocking the dude out, Camille looks at computer systems in that same room at Kilimanjaro, and he reads the riot act to the doctor who did this to her, because now he knows the extent of what happened. Now, sadly, at this point, Jerid hobbles his ass into the room, but 4 knocks him over because he a bitch. The two manage to escape, but 4 is not all there in the head after they get out. She's not even recalling losing her memories at this point, which is something that, as we saw earlier on in this episode, was a big deal to her. Jerid catches up in a jeep and holds them at gunpoint. However, Karaba finally attacks, and Camille uses the distraction to kick the gun out of Jerid's hand, and then toss his bitch ass down a fucking mountain. So this wasn't a mobile suit fight, but I'm giving Camille another win on the tally for that one, because that's just fucking funny. Amuro and his men press the attack hard, supported by Quattro and the Zeta Gundam. Camille and 4 are having issues as well, where 4's psycho conditioning takes hold. At this point, she's just not the same person. All she is able to do is kill. She manages to summon the Psycho Gundam and tosses Camille aside. Also, Jerid somehow makes his way back into the base and gets into the new mobile suit that is being developed, which we're not going to break down today because it's actually not finished yet. We'll talk about it when the suit is finished in the next episode. At this point, Jamitov runs away like a rat fleeing the nest. Now, Char spots Camille and gets the Zeta to him. The two have an argument over what's expected of Camille, and Char is not hearing Camille's shit right now. When 4 spots the Zeta, she transforms the Psycho Gundam. Now, Amuro wants to get in and put a stop to this, but Camille wants the chance to try to talk her down. Jerid comes in with the unfinished mobile suit, which is called the Byerlant, and 4 is ordered to protect Jamitov's shuttle, which she succeeds at, basically by swatting and new typing at Char. So effectively, she beat him by waving her hands at him and just being, like, a bitch. I guess it works. He still opens fire on Jamitov's shuttle, but the fire from the Psycho Gundam is so thick that he can't get a good shot off. Thing is, at this point, the Titans are largely getting their shit pushed in. The Kilimanjaro base is blowing up from the inside out, and this gives Camille an opening to try to talk to 4 and get her to her senses. During the process of this, Jerid tries to attack Camille, and 4 moves in front of them. Jerid, during the melee, stabs the Psycho Gundam in the head, destroying it. 4 is thrown from the mobile suit, but she is at this point on death's door. Char and Amuro land near the Zeta to protect Camille, with both of them remarking on history effectively repeating itself. Char grabs Camille and 4 with the Hyakushiki, and then both the Hyakushiki and the Dija grab the Zeta Gundam and take everyone back to the Aldumla. As Kilimanjaro explodes, Camille cradles the now dead body of the woman he loved. When he walks away, he tells Char that he'll never call him Quattro again, and he has no choice but to live his life as Char Aznable. Surprisingly, Char completely agrees. On the next episode of Gundam Explained, the Gryps War, we move to the final moments of the conflict. The Titans, Axis, Zeon, and the Ayug all move into a massive clash in outer space that will permanently change the lives of everyone involved. There's really only one way this can end, and when these forces clash, someone's gonna lose, and lose terribly. Next time, Casualties of War. You will see the tears of time.